How many of you question the thoughts in your head? Of course, we're all here, right? How many of you question the details of the stories you create in your head? Some of us maybe not as much, right? Wendell Johnson tried to get us to realize that we are our most enchanted listener. And we should eavesdrop on what those stories are that we are creating in our heads. I'm here this morning to hopefully get you to start thinking about how you tune in, because that sense of listening, that sense of hearing, is what keeps us from being able to delay responding to what's happening, and especially those stories we tell ourselves. So, let's tune in to how we listen at work. We know from research that Fortune 500 companies show the cost of poor listening accounting for annual losses valued as high as $37 billion. So, my friends, what's the cost of poor listening for you at work? Any of these resonate with you? Give me one. Yeah.
Less stress.
Less stress. Less rework, right? Because I have less stress.
Interpersonal conflict.
Conflict. For me, I want to point out the last one, and that is low retention. If students are not listening, they are not staying at the university. So, in front of you, you have the latest research on 4 different types of listening. We do all of them, but if you'd pull out a pencil, I'd like you to follow along with me as I talk about them, because listening is primarily a cognitive response. Even though we see it behaviorally, because some of you are nodding your heads, right? I know that you're listening. However, some of you are also tilting your heads, and you're listening as well, but you're listening for different things. So, if we've got a habit and we have a conscious choice, wouldn't you like to know what those are? I do. First one up. If you listened to Corey this morning and you found yourself writing down, searching is the non-being, and you say to yourself, I can't wait to go back and share that with my team at work. My department needs to know that. You know what? I think my students need to know that. That's a paradigm shift. I'm thinking about people. I'm filtering everything I listen for through people, how it's going to affect people. So take your pencils, now is your opportunity. Which of those strengths resonate with you? So in other words, do you provide support and empathy? Do you listen for the feelings behind facts? And you can check as many or as few that are you. And you got to check those challenges too, because by golly, if you are listening for people and you're getting caught up in the emotion, you may actually sacrifice facts and data. And you can often be ruled by your emotion. You got those check marks done? Strengths and challenges. Next up, I referred to this earlier, the person who may be sitting back in their chair at your meeting and have their head tilted instead of leaning forward and nodding, may be thinking about how what you're talking about applies to their previous experiences. Right now, some of you are going, I know about listening, and Mary's telling me stuff I've never heard about listening. I can't run that through any of my library data, any of my facts I have. So there's a chance, right, that you say, this is not useful information for me. So you would check the box that says may not use, right? May miss potential applications. The rest of you, if this is a preference for you, and by the way, you can have several of these preferences. We use all 4 of them. It's just that some of them we do automatically, and some we have to shift to, because they're not our habit. But some of you may immediately start going, I need this. This has personal meaning for me. So you may have your head tilted and you may not be able to tell me exactly yet what it is you're going to do with this information, but it is in there. Make those check marks, would you? All the ones that resonate with you. How many of you have been reading ahead? I think I forgot to give that, when you take the test, it says, please do not go any further. Do not turn the page. All right, next up. This is those of us, right? This analytical, we listen for facts and data. How many $1 billion of losses? 37, thank you. How many of you also said, where'd she get that fact? Yeah, okay. Your preference is listening for data and facts. And by the way, it's from the Holmes report in 2011. And the Holmes group is an international PR group. That satisfies those of you who are listening for accuracy of information. And thank goodness we have those people on our teams. These are the people who will make sure you're right because they absolutely have to get it right. May miss others' feelings, but we want this person at the table. We need this cognitive listening diversity in all of our team meetings. We want somebody who's paying attention to the accuracy of the information. Check those boxes if that's you. If you haven't already shut off the interaction. Last but not least, big ideas. We who have this preference sit in an audience at a conference like a general semantic symposium, and we're writing things down as furious as we can. Oh, and by the way, our pens might be tapping on our paper and our feet might be we are leaning forward and our eyes are like just alive because we absolutely connect ideas. So if you're listening about listening and these habits and you start going, I need this to happen in my curriculum, I need this to not just be in my classroom, but in the general ed curriculum, because you know what? It might be tied to retention. You are listening for big ideas. You also could be that person, if you look at this, if you're checking any of the boxes in the challenges, you could also be that person that talks too much, right? So you may not get to the point, and you may read in more than what has happened. So you may walk away from a meeting and go, oh, we decided that. No, we did not decide that. You decided that in your head because you just kept making all of these connections. So did you get those boxes checked? How many of you noticed there's a total at the top? Can you put those totals in? Count up all the checks, the ones in the challenges and the ones in the strengths. No, count them total. So you remember there is no ideal listening preference. It's a habit. If you don't hear anything else I say this morning, hear this. There is no good or bad listener. You can tell this to your significant other. You just listen for different things. So if I'm proposing that this helps us then delay our responses, let's see how it works when we interact with other people with differing listening preferences. So your top numbers, whatever they were, and by the way, the total can only be 8 because there's 4 of each in each category. Your top numbers Let's say your top number was the connective preference. That's the listening for people and processes. And you're in a meeting with someone who only filters things through their experiences. How might that not go well for you if you're not aware of how you listen and what you listen for? Well, it might mean that you drive each other crazy, and that challenges, right? Because people with a reflective preference, and those of you who had high numbers in this know, you're the ones that are quieter at meetings, because you want to make sure when you say something it makes sense and it works well. So the person who's always talking about people might kind of drive you crazy. And if we're not aware of that, then we're not sharing meaning. So it's important that we speak into someone's listening preference. So what does that mean for me? If my preference is people, I listen for people, and the person I'm interacting with listens for their experience and their expertise. Best thing I can do is ask them about their past experiences with this problem. If you have a quiet person in a meeting and their head's kind of tilted, you know they're there with you. People who have this preference have told me people think they're aloof, people think they don't care, but they really have all kinds of good ideas in their minds. They're just not going to say it until you draw it out of them. So ask them about their experiences, because that's how they listen. That's what they're listening for. So ask them about their past experiences. Or if you're in charge of the agenda, leave time in the meeting for people to talk. Because most of the time, that person with that preference for experience, idea, right, expertise, is the person who needs time to get it ready to be able to say it. Okay, last two, interacting. If you are our facts person, please, please, please ask those questions. And if you are the ideas person, you're the one who just wants to connect everything, remember that those probing questions are going to make your ideas better. Your ideas are going to be fully vetted through reality. So if you hear people say, you need a reality check, don't shut them off. Remember that you've got to talk into their listening habit. You've got to share meaning with someone who listens for the facts we need to make good decisions. So, if I've enticed you at all to be a better listener, remember, there's no good or bad, but maybe just have a better idea of how you listen. Flip over the page. And depending on your preference, I'd like you to think of one intention. So there's 5 for each listening preference. I want you to think of one you can do this week. So if you are listen for people, that's your thing. You don't have to shift to get there. You do it automatically. Pick one of those 5. If you're the one with your head tilted, pick the one from reflective. If your eyes are dancing right now, you're at the bottom of the sheet. Pick the one from conceptual. And if you knew that answer to 37 billion or where I got the information, pick it from the analytical preference. Anybody have one they want to share that they're going to use this week? Okay. And tell us what it is.
It's fact-based and detailed questions to show interest in rational thinking.
Yeah, ask those fact-based questions. Both if you listen for people and if you listen for ideas. That's your go-to question.
At times when it's particularly busy, number 2 for connective, take time to reflect on information rather than rushing to action with limited knowledge.
Yeah, it's a great segue to my closure. And that is, thanks, Ed. I didn't even ask him to do that. He just did that for me, because my time's up. So my mentor wrote a book, he brought general semantics to Manchester, and he wrote a book called Monologue to Dialogue. And he says that think of listening as our verbal response to what we hear from ourselves as well as others. Thank you.